Hello, everyone. We're starting a two-part series on clarity and goal setting. And today we're going to talk about declutter, de-noise, and de-stress to achieve that clarity. Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is Choose FI.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, guys, very excited to dive into this week's episode. And to help me with this, I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I'm doing quite well. Yeah, it's mid-March already. It's hard to believe. And it's kind of interesting to, like you said, declutter, right? You're thinking about spring cleaning. You're thinking about, again, I know I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, like yesterday when we changed the clocks is one of my favorite days of the whole year.
Did we change clocks yesterday?
Damn it, Jonathan.
No, I'm serious. Wait, yesterday daylight savings?
I'm going into the future because we're recording this a couple of days before, but when it goes live.
No. Sorry. I understand what you just did. And now I'm cool with it. I legitimately thought I had like this badass thing where like daylight savings had occurred and it did not affect my life, which would have been like so meta.
That would have been a lot cooler. Be a lot cooler if you did, right?
Yes.
That would be, oh man. So no, unfortunately you didn't miss it. It's, when this episode goes live, it will have been yesterday. But yeah, it's just, it feels like hope. I love this time of year. I really do. It just, starting to see some things bloom outside and it just, it feels good. We hit 80 degrees the other day. So yeah, anyway, that's what's going on by me.
If we had been scheduled to record yesterday, I would have requested that we kick it back to today. Today, a rainy day. Yesterday, like a little gift from heaven. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was glorious. I agree.
So speaking of this, this absolutely perfect weather day that we had, I was out in the backyard and I feel like the garden, the attempt at creating the 1/4 acre or whatever we have, the 1/8 of an acre plot of land that we're trying to put some stuff on. It's like the gift that keeps giving for life metaphors. So if our audience starts to observe a pattern where, wow, Jonathan was working outside this week, and then here's yes, it's an observable pattern. And here's what I realized yesterday. There's a quote that all of us have heard before. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Now, I'm going to give this back to you, Brad, but I just wanted to point out, I was in the process of planting. I ordered a peach tree and an apple tree. The peach tree arrived and I needed to get it planted. And I realized, what's kind of frustrating about this? Like, I'm going to plant this tree today and it's going to be literally like 3 years before I get any benefit, any fruit whatsoever from this thing. Like, it's like, man, I wish I had done this 3 years ago. And that's the entire point. Like, you have to do something now in order to get results later. Like, planting a tree is the perfect application of delayed gratification.
And isn't that what our financial independence life is, right? It is literally an exercise in delayed gratification. But more than that, it's an exercise in thinking long-term. Because I think when you hear delayed gratification, you think of deprivation in terms of current. And again, I always reject that. I don't think I'm living a life of deprivation. I don't think you are. I don't think our audience members are. But I think what we are doing to great effect is thinking long term.
Exactly. And as I was planting that tree, Brad, I was realizing if the only reason that I was doing this is just to have fruit next week, this would be pointless. But if you have I even think planting a tree is a nice parallel for financial independence, because we don't have like a 60-year timeline till we get the benefits of something. It's rather I think we think about things in terms of this intermediate timeline, and we're taking actions each and every day to get closer to our goals.
Yeah, and Jonathan, as you were talking, this reminded me of a quote that I think I heard Mr. Money Mustache mention, but as I looked it up, it's attributed to Nelson Henderson, and it's the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. And right, I mean, how profound is that? The true meaning of life. And it's about long-term thinking, obviously, but it's also about avoiding selfishness. It's about thinking about your community and society as a whole, right? If we all just did things to selfishly improve our lives, we'd be cutting down trees. We wouldn't be planting them, right? And I feel like that quote has always just really hit me since the first time I heard it. And it's how I want to conceptualize my life and society. And I think we'd be a whole lot better off if a lot of us really internalize that as well. And so, I love that you are literally planting trees for not today, not tomorrow, but 3, 5, 20 years from now. It's really cool. This new farmer, Jonathan, I think it's amazing. I'm genuinely proud of you. It just seems like something that you're loving. It's beneficial, right? It's beneficial for the world. It's great. It really genuinely is great.
Well, I genuinely appreciate that feedback. There's almost like a sounding board here of using these great thoughts that we've kind of been able to document over time and using it to position ourselves to move forward and get clarity on what it is that we're trying to achieve. So in the case of, really something you just said there about wanting to change the world, there's another quote actually. Let's see, this is attributed to the internet. Yep, the internet, circa mid 2000s.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness, I didn't see that one coming.
We try to give credit where credit is due. Here's the quote though, and it's really good. When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. When I found I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town. And as an older man, I tried to change my family. And now as an old man, I realized the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly I realized that if long ago I had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town, and their impact could have changed the nation. And I could indeed have changed the world, quote unquote, the internet. Now, this really is a huge truth. This is a huge truth. It goes back to the idea that you say, recognize what you actually have control over. What is your locus of control? We're going to talk about decluttering in this episode. And we've done a lot of episodes on this. We've talked about it through several lenses. We've talked about it through the idea of alligators versus kittens. We've talked about it through the lens of just, does this spark joy? All these types of things. But have you noticed how every single day you wake up and there's something that absolutely demands your attention and your opinion on the internet? You have to show that you're right and everyone else is wrong and your opinion matters, except it changes absolutely nothing to anybody, right? Like, hey, let me go on Facebook and just win this. Like, someone on the internet is wrong. I'm going to win this. Okay, that was 45 minutes of your life. I hope you're happy with that thread that is buried forever. What can be changed by winning a Facebook argument? Absolutely nothing. At what point do we recognize that all of these things that we have absolutely no control over are adding to a toxic environment of noise and stress? And in our desire to fix everything there, we're ignoring the people that we have influence over, the circumstances that we can't actually control, the environment that we live our lives in, and everything just piles up to the point where you walk around constantly stressed. There is no escape. There is no oasis. There's nothing. It's a constant drumbeat of stress from cradle to grave.
Yeah. And as you described, we had the happy philosopher on our show way back when, episode 48. And you mentioned in passing there, alligators and kittens. And this to me is one of the themes that has actually made my life dramatically better from our show. Like maybe one of the top 5 things. I mean, obviously we've talked about a lot of different topics and had amazing guests on, but this one little, probably 5-minute conversation on episode 48 really made a significant positive impact on my life. And his kind of whole thesis was, okay, alligators and kittens. So alligators are those nasty things in your life that are somehow causing you stress, bringing that attention to in a negative sense. Whereas the kittens are these happy little lovable things in your life that make your life better. And I guess the argument is, okay, clearly you want more kittens, right? But this is like the house is on fire type scenario when there are all these alligators just waiting there to kind of snap at you. Everywhere you look, like you said, Jonathan, on social media, listening to the news, whatever it may be, right? Like having to worry about your financial life, or did I pay that bill? Did I do this? And like, I now think about all of those negative stressors as alligators in my life. And it's how can I cut as many of them out as possible? Now, it's always impossible, clearly, to cut out all the stress in your life. But how can you declutter, truly? How can you declutter your life to get rid of those alligators? And I know for me, a couple of the big things that I've cut out just almost cold turkey were social media and the news. And, this is from a former like news and politics junkie. Like when I was growing up, I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. Like my wife would joke, like, you're the only person I know that could name all 100 U.S. senators. I knew who
the health secretary was under Nixon and Carter. I remember the cabinet positions that were filled through the 1990s.
Yeah, that's not far off. And now, I care zero. And it's not that I don't care. It's just that I don't follow. Like I care about
I care. I'm not actually sure I care. I wish I could say otherwise, but I'm not sure I care anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, following it to the degree that I did helped me zero. It just made my life worse. And, obviously you want to be an informed citizen. You want to, to some degree have, like you said, I know you're probably going to disagree, but like,
no, I'm not disagreeing as much as I'm just cynical on information.
I haven't gone over to the cynical side yet, but I've certainly gone to the,
you're right. Thanks for pulling me back. I wasn't trying to go to a cynical place. There's plenty of cynicism around. You're right. Thank you. Thank you for staying on the narrow path here. Okay. But Brad, to your point, that is a prior version of yourself. And I think the big transition for you was the path to financial independence or reaching financial independence. And I'd love to hear, being where you are now on this path, at financial independence and beyond, what that has afforded you in terms of, what changes you have made to actually declutter, de-stress, de-noise.
Yeah, well, that is a great question, Jonathan. And yeah, we could probably build the rest of this episode out around like these large themes. So, for me, a lot of them have come around decluttering or getting rid of social media. Like to your point from 5 minutes ago, getting into war, not that I would ever do that necessarily, but like ruminating and just stressing over, oh, this person said that. I can't imagine that. Like, that's a path to nowheresville. That's a path to just stress. So like I try to go on social media as little as I possibly can. I think for me, I've set up my financial life to be as stress-free as humanly possible. And, this again is a larger conversation, but putting everything on autopilot, just trying to make it so that there's no worry from day to day, week to week. And as I've talked about many times on the show, sometimes that means doing suboptimal things, right? Like leaving extra money in my checking account because I don't want to have to sit there and micromanage, hey, when is the electric bill coming out? When is this credit card bill coming out? Like, I don't want to micromanage that stuff because it's just clutter in my mind. One of the big things I've done is, again, talking about clutter of the mind, is I've used this tool called Todoist, Todoist. And it's just a to-do list task. In essence, there's nothing revolutionary about it. But the way that I've used it, I think, is revolutionary to a degree in the sense that I have put everything in my life on this Todoist app. So any single thing that has a future due date, even recurring, whether it's a month from now or 6 years from now, 10 years from now. The example I always use is my passport. And I actually just renewed my passport recently. And I went in and now I have a task for 10 years from now. I kid you not, Jonathan, 10 years from now, because I don't want to have to think about it. And I don't want to have to worry about missing anything. So it's like, if you trust your system 95%, you trust it 0% in essence. But if you trust it 100% and it's locked down and you put everything in there, then you don't have to stress. This stuff is not rattling around my brain anymore. So by being diligent, by setting up this framework, it has made my entire life easier.
So we and the team put together an article that we've actually decided to make like an evergreen article that we are going to continually update and add ideas to in terms of kind of being a master plan around this alligator concept, this declutter concept. And if you're listening to this episode and you want to go down this journey with us and kind of see the tips that we're going to talk about, and it's going to have everything. We're talking about financial tips. We're going to talk about decluttering physical stuff that's in your house, that sort of thing. let me encourage you, go to choosefi.com, declutter. And we're going to start with this idea of the self-check. The self-check to address the mess. And the concept being, how can we identify areas in our life? And we could be talking about, financial documents. We could talk about literal just clothing and stuff and trash and debris that's around our house of varying levels of value. All the different areas that we could talk about, toxic relationships. What would it look like to declutter, denoise, and de-stress our life? Go to choosefi.com/declutter to, really try to go down this path further on your own time. So if we broke this up into like 5 categories, Brad, the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why. Those are the 5 W's. I think that's what you learn in school when you really want to journalism. Isn't that journalism 101? So who? Relationships. Who am I interacting with on a regular basis that makes me feel overwhelmed, anxious, frustrated? Listen, you get to choose in the vast majority of cases who you associate with. And if you don't feel like you have that control now, we can change that. You can make moves slowly. It's not, it's a planting a tree, right? It might take a couple of years, but we can start. You can make the choice. If people are dragging you down, if people are adding toxic emotional stress to your life, if it's take, not giving, I'm not talking about your kids, right? This does not apply to your kids. I'm sorry, work with your kids, right? But in general, your peers, your quote unquote friends, your relatives, like when you are around people that they wake up in the morning to tear you down, you're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to step away. That's okay. Who am I interacting with on a regular basis that makes me feel overwhelmed, anxious, or frustrated? Conversely, who am I around on a regular basis that lifts me up, that inspires me to be a better person? We had a whole episode dedicated to this. Who's in your fave 5, right? It used to be you had to pick on your cell phone who you were going to get unlimited minutes to. I think that was probably the single best decision that a cell phone company ever made. They got rid of it quickly. I don't know why. Now you can talk to everybody. Is that better? I don't know. But really figuring out who you are, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Who's going to be in those spots?
Yeah, Jonathan, that's interesting. And this whole who thing, it reminds me, I feel like people get so much stress, sadly, many people, from their families, right? From arbitrary, I don't know if rules, but expectations. And I always think about this in terms of holidays. You always hear these horror stories, but it seems like they're not just random one-off horror stories. They're just oh, my parents are going to give us hell if we don't come there every other Thanksgiving or 2 out of 3 Thanksgivings. And so many of these things just exist. And it's ultimately just a power struggle to nowhere. For what? Why would you put up with that? To mollify some people who are just I don't know, causing you stress needlessly? It has never really made any sense to me. So I don't play those games. I really don't. And when you understand that you can just get yourself out of this power struggle, it's not just I also think in terms of my kids' sports. Everyone at our swim club is kowtows to these coaches and whatnot, as if they have any power over you at all, as if they can do anything, as if they're somebody important. I just don't understand the power dynamics that people let themselves fall into needlessly. You can just opt out in most cases. You can just do what's right for you and your family, right? When it comes to the swim club, everybody else plays the game of, okay, we're going to go on a 4-day travel trip and the kids are going to be forced to miss school just for some random fictional championship meet that isn't even a championship meet, right? And it's only a championship meet because these coaches have said it is, but it's the same water. It's the same kids. It's just
is the pool commuting getting a little much, Brad?
It is, but I genuinely think it is a larger issue.
I'm not saying it's not.
So it's we have just opted out. There's this one, like I said, kind of fictional championship meet in August every year, and we have never gone, and we will never go, and we are the only family that doesn't go out of hundreds.
And then the other family's are they allowed to do that? Are they allowed to every year? Well,
you can kind of do what works for your life. So yeah, I know that's kind of a
no. Let me build on that if you don't mind, because I haven't experienced that. I've made it a rule, and I don't know if I'll be able to actually survive this, but I'm determined not to become a taxi cab parent when my kids are now they're only 2 and 4. So will I be able to maintain that line? I don't know. Maybe I'm naive. Trying to think that I will at this point, though. Anyways, that being said, even if that is not the exact scenario, how many of us have fallen into the vortex of personality, and that personality is toxic? You have a very charismatic but toxic boss or leader that everybody sucks up to. Everybody is just trying to get in line. They'll snipe each other. They'll cut the feet out just to occasionally get the pat on the back. You can opt out. That's not your journey. Your goal, remember the goal here, is not to go up the corporate ladder to the very, very top so you can retire with honors at 75 and a gold watch. You have a different plan. How many of us immediately had a person in mind? Oh yeah, that's my whatever. Well, I know I've experienced that. How about a roommate or a neighbor where it's just the whole neighborhood is just sucking up to this person for whatever reason? It's a vortex of personality. You recognize that it's toxic. You recognize that there's aspects that are like, man, I just feel like it brings out the worst in people when they're around this. You don't need it. You get to choose. You can choose to follow this person, this entity, wherever they go and snipe for position under their, shadow, or you can forge your own path. It goes to what your goals are. Listen, here's the quality of leaders. I used to think that leadership was some sort of innate thing that you either had or you didn't. A leader knows what they want and they spend their time thinking about how to get there. Listen, with me, you can lead me or you can follow me. But if you're just trying to block me or just hover in just this realm of indecisiveness, get out of the way, right? I've decided like the path that I'm on, what I want to achieve. And the only two characteristics are people that want to follow that path or people that want to lead me closer towards my goals. That's what I'm looking for. If you're just somewhere over here causing chaos for what I've determined is my goal, I'm going to eliminate or reduce the amount of time that I spend in your zone of influence. It comes down to that. And part of that, again, goes to knowing what you want.
And isn't that what we're doing here in the financial independence community? One of these other major values of FI is you can opt out, right? You can opt out of the BS that everybody else puts up with because you're not playing the same game as them. You're simply not. You can say no to things because, like you said, Jonathan, the goal isn't to get that gold watch after 50 years of work. It's not to rise up the corporate ladder. It's to build a life that you love, right? I mean, that's the goal here. And our timeline is a whole heck of a lot different. And your power structure in your life is a whole lot better when you have a 50% plus savings rate. The power dynamic of your life is just simply different. And you can say no to these toxic things. You can say no to meetings and calls that just stress you out. You can say no to the constant need to be on your phone, on your computer, responding to emails within 5 minutes, right? Like you can say no to these things because you're not playing the same game as everybody else. And that is massively important.
Hey, this is Andrew from the Choose FI team. Hope you're enjoying the show. We're going to get right back to it after these quick messages.
As we go through these 5 whys, we could have the conversation about the what, but I really think that's going to fit well into next week. What am I telling myself in my head, about myself? What's the story that I'm telling myself that's keeping me from being successful or getting things done? I think that comes down to goal setting and clarity of vision. We'll talk about that a little bit more next week. But here's one, Brad, and every time I read this, I think directly of you almost one-to-one. When I walk into this area or this space, so when I walk into this area or this space, how does it make me feel?
Yeah, that is one that I love. And my famous word is the oasis. That is what I'm looking for. It's this kind of like mystical thing. Like when I walk into a room, there's something that's peaceful about an organized room. There's something peaceful to minimalism, right? As opposed to just having stuff everywhere. And I mean, Jonathan, obviously I've kind of joked that my perfect life would be basically have a laptop and one backpack worth of clothes and pretty much nothing else. But, obviously that's not realistic in my life, but just having clutter everywhere, like physical clutter, it just brings me down. Like I can't describe how or why, but like just walking into a room sometimes, like I almost like shudder. Like I have this kind of weird emotional, energetic reaction to it's just overwhelming. Like my brain just can't handle it. And there is just something really therapeutic about going through a room and just turning it into that oasis. And I mean, I've tried it here in this office that I'm sitting in, but it always fights back, right? The clutter always fights back.
It's like it has its own mind.
But yeah, it just feels, to me at least, it feels just fantastic when you go through these rooms. And actually, my wife Laura and I have been doing that in our living room. I mean, that is probably like, other than our kitchen, maybe it's like my biggest source of stress, like of all the rooms in our house. And we actually had just like a 2 windows put into that room fairly recently to just make it a much more attractive room, kind of similar to this. There was something almost like energetically like negative about this room. Like it was just dark and it just wasn't fun to be in. So anyway, we put these windows in and now we've gone through and decluttered and it's just a wonderful room. Like it just is nice to be in. So, I'm getting a little like hokey here with the energy and stuff, but like there's something like I can't describe that to you, but like there is something real about it.
Well, the thing about the Oasis is I believe for you, it's almost like if this one room could just be good, like if this one room could be an oasis in a sea of madness, I would have felt like I planted those seeds. I had taken the first step. I can't get everything fixed immediately at once. Right. There's a lot of friction there, but if I can have one room that I can step into and it's a sea change of calm, that would be the start.
Yeah. That's interesting, Jonathan, because now that I think about it, like, I wonder if every room in my house was this oasis, would that feel perfect or would the lack of contrast actually make it less than?
I don't know. Where are you going to put the laptop? I mean, you got to set it down at some point.
I should just like buy a house and leave it empty.
My wife would love that. They would love that. Just empty house. Yeah, that's great.
Oh my goodness.
So on this article, again, choosify.com/declutter, we've gone through and we've tried to aggregate just different strategies for, cleaning your office, cleaning your fridge out, decluttering your electronics. How many people listening to this are sitting on 4 iPhones that don't work, right? Or whatever. Maybe it's not iPhone, it's an Android phone. Platform agnostic. Like cell phones from 2010.
Cords, Jonathan, cords.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Hey, did you know that with the USB cords, some only do electricity, some do electricity and data, and like there's no way of really knowing which ones are which, like for that point. And like, yeah, it's you cords, man. Oh.
Yeah, they're the worst. As part of our recent decluttering of that living room, in like the TV console, like where we had the TV sitting, one of the cabinets, I opened it up and almost like picture things falling out of this cabinet. And it was a mass of cords.
It looked like an oasis when the doors were shut.
Seriously. Oh my goodness. But yeah, it was probably 10 years worth of cords. I don't know we haven't opened that cabinet in 3 years. I have no idea what any of that stuff was. But this is part of this decluttering also. It's like that fear of needing something, right? Like, oh, I can't throw it out because I'm going to need it. Or I could never find that again. Like, not that I'm arguing to get rid of things only to repurchase it again or, like buy something new. Obviously, that's not what we're going for here in terms of, the environment and just sustainability. So not arguing that, but something that I feel like Tim Ferriss talked about this one time in terms of traveling. Like you fear when you go on a trip that, oh, I'm going to need this, or what's that one instance that I might need this little thing and that little thing. And like, it bogs you down both mentally and physically, obviously, right? I mean, again, I haven't opened this cabinet in 3 years. Could I just wholesale get rid of those items? Could I find a way, whether it's throw them out or I don't know, donate them or have them like recycled in some manner, that's a separate issue. But like, could I do that, Jonathan? And in all likelihood, like I wouldn't have to worry? Or is there is that slight chance that I might need a cord someday in the future? I doubt it, but I think that might just be better to just recycle these things, get rid of them, and then like just literally clear that space, both physically and mentally. And then in the off freak chance that I do need one at some point in the future, I can borrow one from you, or I could buy one on the internet.
Definitely
right? Like,
borrow one from me.
You certainly have a lot of cords.
All right. I do think there's some aspect to getting all of the cords in a storage tote, or something along those lines. I agree with you. I have the pain of like, well, what is this? Is this one proprietary cord? Go with this. Like, do I still need this? Like, there's some aspect to just, if you're not sure, get it put in storage. And then if you haven't used it in 5 years, you can be much more confident. And conversely, if you have that panic attack, you have a place that all of these, you can go default to look there, and that'll kind of inform whether you need it or not. But I'm with you, man. Get the cords organized, get them tied up, get them cleaned up. spend some time looking at different storage solutions and get stuff off the floors as best as possible. I'll tell you the one that for me, I think is really worth people's time. I think there's an ROI here in peace of mind is junk mail. Listen, junk mail is ubiquitous and it's coming at you in torrential volume for the vast majority of us. You got credit card offers, donation requests, political mailings, magazines from the owners that lived at the house that you lived at last time. You got sweepstakes. You sometimes get this key in there. Hey, come see if your key is the key that will activate the car and drive your car for free. Like just craziness. It wastes so much time. Often it's a scam, right? It's a scam or it's an offer that's really not in your best interest. It's horrific for the environment. Like really, these things are made out of some sort of glossy paper. You can't compost that. You can't do anything with that. And even worse, and I think this is the biggest thing, you can't find the mail you actually need. The 4 documents a month that you do actually need for various reasons, it absolutely swallows all of that up. So like, what can you do to reduce it? I'm going to give you the number one thing. I think there's like 3 or 4 different things you can do, but the number one thing is go sign up with DMA Choice. DMA Choice. About 80% of all the companies that send this crap are members of this direct marketing association. And so it only costs about $2 and you can block your name and address for 10 years. So absolutely get your name off of that list.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's funny. As you were talking about that, I remembered that I put this in a fi-weekly actually last year. So it's May 11th, 2021, my fi-weekly newsletter. So choosefi.com/subscribe. And actually we have all of the back archives there. So I just called this up and we'll put this in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, the 1% better was stopping junk mail. And I actually got this email from one of our community members, Deborah, and she gave us, it looks like 7 or 8 different ways to opt out of all sorts of different junk mails. And one of them, of course, that she put in was that DMAchoice.org, which is what you're talking about. But there's optoutprescreen.com.
Mm-hmm.
There's like valpack.com where you can opt out, catalogchoice.org. So there's a whole bunch of these. So yeah, we will link this up, but it's from the May 11th, 2021 fi-weekly. So yeah, I mean, this is a really, really simple one that it's similar to what you were just talking about. You didn't use these words, but it's like front loading the sacrifice. A normal way of putting that is you put in the time up front and then all your days future are easier and better. That, as I think about it, is like front loading the sacrifice, which partially is also right? Like it's okay, if I can live these 10, 15, 20 years saving 50% of my income, which again is not deprivation the way that we set it up. But if you can front load that sacrifice, the next 50 to 70 years are going to be dramatically easier. You're going to have so much more choice. So any of these things like setting up systems, Jonathan, that again is how I think about like clutter in just various different ways. Is like, can you set up systems that will make everything forward easier? And we always think like, oh, this just takes me 15 seconds. I'll just do it, right? And it's like the same old way. But you haven't set up a system. You've created a one-off that you need to do every week, every month, whatever it may be, whatever the recurring thing is. But when you set up a system to take care of something, when you put a bill like your electric bill on autopilot, and you might have to log, in our case, we have to log into with Dominion Energy and you have to fill out a form. And it's kind of annoying, honestly. Like it sometimes takes 10, 15, 30 minutes to do. But once you've done that, that's 12 bills a year forevermore that you don't need to worry about. Do I have to cut a check for this? Do I need to log on and pay my bill? Like it's just done. You've front loaded the sacrifice. You've made it easier. So I think this is a great one, is unsubscribing from regular junk mail. I mean, Jonathan, unsubscribing from digital mail, right? From emails is another huge one. Like I've kind of gone through this in like a very manual fashion of whenever I get emails now, I have some old email accounts that I get a lot of these kind of more, lists or junk type things. I just unsubscribe ruthlessly now. And there's a handful that I keep because I really enjoy them. But otherwise, every single day I'm unsubscribing from something to the point, ultimately, hopefully, of just getting good emails, real emails that I actually care about, or these 5 to 10 subscriptions that I genuinely enjoy and care about. So like that's the goal. It's a little bit of effort. It takes 1 second to click, but it's so worth it because then I'm getting far fewer emails. There's far fewer pings. Not that I've turned off all my notifications, but that lure to go, oh, I'm just going to check my email because I don't know what's there. Well, eventually there's going to be virtually nothing there, right? And that'll be then the one time a day check or the one time every other day check. So that's the goal.
It's so funny, Brad. It's like it's recognizing where you are on this path. And interestingly enough, it is very much tied to your path to financial independence. So effectively what you're doing is right now you are in the process of saying no. Let's start there. Right now you're saying no. One of the easiest ways to free up more time to say yes to things is to say no to other things. That applies to when you get asked to do an event, you get asked to do, any number of time intensive projects. You're trying to go up the corporate ladder, so you volunteer for everything. Okay, maybe. You are trying to be the best parent, so you say yes to every possible activity for your kids. You're trying to be, all these things to all people. You're a yes person, and you resent everybody for it because you literally don't know how to say no. That's probably not a good balance. It's very good to say yes. Say no to everything can also be selfish. But if you resent everything and everyone, yet you always say yes to everything and everyone, you are out of balance. And so recognizing what would I be willing to say no to? I say no to nothing right now. What would I be willing to say no to? And starting to flex that, whether it be subscriptions that are involuntarily being thrust in your mailbox or whether it be various events and activity that you default into yes because the no is too painful. That's probably something to focus on. As you get farther on the path to financial independence, especially after you're out of the corporate world in general, there's this concept out there called inbox zero, which is I'm going to get my Gmail to zero. I'm going to get it there and I'm going to keep it there. Like you're a steward, you're a warden. You will always maintain this. This will be 15 minutes, 3 times a day. And this is my habit and my practice. And I can always tell everybody how organized my Gmail is. There was some point on my journey where I realized I just didn't care anymore. And it didn't cause enough pain in my life to ever do anything about it. So I am now going the opposite way and I'm trying to rack up the awards for most unlooked at, unanswered emails of all time.
I think I saw 5 digits for you last time I saw a screen share.
I am not unsubscribing. I'm not taking any action. I have just abandoned it. Occasionally something shows up as starters, important. Maybe I'll take a look at it. And occasionally I'll miss something. But I've actually noticed, like as much as I hate Facebook Messenger and text messages and all these things, at least with the message, it's just done. You don't need to go back and find it. You don't need to rely on it recognizes for what it was, a moment in time, as opposed to an email that even if it's read, you're like, well, do I need to delete? It's like 2 judgments. It's multiple layers of decisions that you have to make. Is this important? Is it important for now? Is it important for later? Should I star it? Should I add them to my contacts? All right, I answered it. I replied to it. Should I delete it now? Should I archive it? Like, that's crazy. And yes, it matters what decision you make, like less than 0.01% of the time. But the fact is, a lot of times people are like, hey, are you going to make the call on Wednesday? By email. And that email is now an additional decision I have to make about to then read it and then to delete it if I don't need it because, it has stuff above it, right? I've just abandoned Gmail. I do go check it occasionally, but I have abandoned it entirely in terms of maintaining that. And I'm kind of okay with it. And Brad, that actually sets us up for what point do we just abandon the societal norms entirely? I'll give you another example that I know you're passionate about and you can relate to, even though you've taken a different strategy than me on emails. The Red X month. This is not a societal norm.
No, it's not. And it's certainly been something that's been wonderful for myself and my family. So Vincent Puglisi introduced this to us way back when on the podcast, and we'll have to have him on again here soon. I think he's coming out with a new book, actually, Jonathan, which is cool. But picture the concept of looking at your calendar, your physical calendar, and going to a month and just taking a big old red marker and putting a big X through that month, that I'm off the grid, right? I can't be reached. I'm taking this red X month in whatever manner that I see fit, right? In whatever manner I want to spend my time with myself, my family, my loved ones, my friends. And that can be as much or as little as you want, which is so cool. Like it can be traveling the world, or it can be staying at home and spending time with your loved ones. It ultimately doesn't matter. It's on your terms. I think that's what we're getting at here. And, Jonathan, you mentioned something to me. I'm on a Red X year, right? Like that's, isn't that the ultimate goal of FI, right? Like of what we're doing here, of decluttering, of saying no. Obviously, that doesn't mean you're going to be a hermit and just garden 365 days a year. And it doesn't mean you're going to say no to everything. But if you have that framework of, hey, I'm on a Red X year, that changes a whole lot in terms of what you do say yes to and what you do say no to, and the threshold that it reaches, right? And there's there's obviously a cost to some of this stuff. If anybody's listening to this and thinking that, oh, just say no to everything, there's no cost to it, it's only to the good. Obviously, by definition, if you're saying yes to a lot of things now, you're getting some value out of it. Or, you might feel some obligation. Obviously, that's part of many things we say yes to. But there are plenty of things that I currently say no to that I would enjoy, getting together with people or having a coffee or hopping on a Zoom call or going to speak at this conference or that conference or going on a guest podcast like in my life. But I kind of say no to most of these things, not because I think I'm great or I wouldn't lower myself to do, nothing ridiculous like that. And I hope people don't think of me like that I'm just saying no to be a jerk or anything. I'm saying no because I value my time so much, because there are things that I genuinely want to spend my time on. And often that means having to say no to things that are pretty darn good, right? And it reminds me of, I think it was Derek Sivers who said this quote, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. I mean, think about how profound that is. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no, right? I mean, Jonathan, think about how many things we all normally just say yes to. And then we dread, or we put it off to the future. Oh, of course I'll do that thing 2 months from now. And then when you see it show up on your calendar, you're hating your prior self, right? Why couldn't I have just had the guts to say no? And that is one of those examples. And we all have that. We have that a lot, that if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
We probably should do a whole episode on the art of saying no at some point.
Yeah.
Put that on the books, man. I need to do some prep work on that. All of us, including you and I, could do better job with how we go about saying no. Okay, that, my friends, brings us to the end of this episode. But really, it's part one of a 2-part episode. We're going to be coming back next week. And we're really going to be we're going to be building on this concept, clarity for goal setting. Clarity for goal setting. So I hope you'll join us for that. Let me just remind you again, this is a living evergreen article. We're going to continue to build that out. In fact, there were even some stuff that we talked about on this episode that really didn't make it into that article, and we're going back to add some of the additional content. We hope that you will provide that feedback to us as well. If you're on our newsletter, you're likely getting prompts. If you have an additional, input on what decluttering looks like in your life or what actions you're taking, we'd love to know what that is. And you can either, reply to those newsletter, or you can send your feedback to ask@choosify.com. Again, the link for that article, choosify.com/declutter. All right, my friends, the fire's spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.